Ma'am, I regret to inform you.
No, it can't be.
It's confirmed. I'm sorry.
Oh my God.
He signed the divorce papers with a careless flick of his wrist, the expensive pen gliding across the page as if he were approving a dinner bill rather than ending a marriage. A crooked smile tugged at his lips, and he leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms with visible satisfaction. "I hope your imaginary empire keeps you warm at night," he muttered under his breath, just loud enough for her to hear. The fluorescent lights of the courtroom cast a pale glow over her calm face, but she didn't flinch. She simply watched him the way one watches a storm pass, knowing it will rage loudly before disappearing into silence. For years, he had mocked her quiet confidence, her late-night phone calls spoken in hushed tones, the way she would occasionally disappear for meetings that she never fully explained. He had accused her of pretending to be important, of crafting fantasies to compensate for what he believed was mediocrity. He measured success in visible possessions, cars, watches, public recognition, while she moved through life with understated grace, wearing simple clothes and driving an unremarkable vehicle. He never questioned how she could afford to donate generously to charities without asking him for money. He never wondered why influential people seemed to greet her with subtle respect at events he barely qualified to attend. Instead, he convinced himself that she was exaggerating her connections, inflating her sense of purpose. The judge's voice echoed faintly as the divorce was finalized, but he barely listened. He was too busy savoring what he thought was victory. To him, this was freedom from a woman who dreamed too big. When they stepped outside the courthouse, the city hummed with its usual rhythm, unaware that his entire perception of reality was about to fracture. She paused on the steps, breathing in the crisp afternoon air, her posture straight and composed. He chuckled, adjusting his tie. "Good luck finding someone who believes your fairy tales," he called out, expecting her to react. Instead, she offered a small, almost wistful smile. That was when the first black car pulled up to the curb. Its polished surface reflected the skyline like liquid glass. A uniformed driver stepped out swiftly and opened the rear door with practiced precision. He frowned, assuming it was coincidence. Perhaps she had splurged for dramatic effect. But then a second vehicle arrived, followed by a third. Men and women in impeccably tailored suits exited, their expressions focused and deferential. One approached her with a tablet in hand. "Ma'am, the Zurich board is awaiting your confirmation. The merger will proceed once you approve." The words struck him like a physical blow. Zurich, board, merger. His laughter died in his throat. He scanned their faces for signs of mockery, certain this was some elaborate performance meant to embarrass him. Yet there was no humor in their eyes, only respect. She turned toward him then, and for the first time he noticed something he had overlooked for years. Not arrogance, not pretense, but power restrained by choice. "Take care," she said softly, her voice neither bitter nor triumphant. As she stepped into the car, another aide handed her documents embossed with a crest he vaguely recognized from financial news headlines. The convoy moved smoothly into traffic, leaving him stranded on the courthouse steps with the echo of his own ridicule ringing in his ears. Within hours, his phone began vibrating incessantly. Notifications flooded his screen, breaking news alerts, financial updates, viral social media posts. Her full name, the one she rarely used, dominated every headline. Analysts spoke breathlessly about the reemergence of a reclusive trillionaire heiress who had secretly overseen a global empire spanning technology, renewable energy, international banking, and private aerospace ventures. Commentators praised her strategic brilliance, revealing that she had deliberately concealed her identity for years to avoid exploitation and to find genuine connection. Photographs surfaced of her attending high-level summits, standing beside world leaders, signing multi-billion-dollar agreements. Each image dismantled another piece of his pride. He replayed every sarcastic remark he had ever thrown at her, every dismissive laugh when she mentioned expanding into new markets or funding innovation hubs in developing countries. He remembered telling her to be realistic, to stop pretending she was destined for greatness. Now the irony suffocated him. The woman he had just mocked for living in fantasy-owned companies that shaped global economies. She had chosen simplicity not because she lacked wealth, but because she valued authenticity over display. And he had mistaken humility for weakness. As dusk settled over the city, he stood alone, the courthouse steps suddenly feeling like the edge of a cliff from which he had willingly leapt, unaware that he was abandoning not just unimaginable fortune, but a partner whose vision extended far beyond anything his small ambitions could ever comprehend. The weeks that followed felt unreal to him, as though he were trapped inside a story everyone else was watching from a distance. Her name dominated financial networks, business magazines, and global headlines, no longer whispered in private boardrooms, but spoken boldly across continents. Analysts described her as the silent architect behind some of the largest technological breakthroughs of the decade. Footage showed her stepping out of private jets, entering glass towers that carried her family crest, and addressing rooms filled with world leaders who listened with focused admiration. She moved with quiet authority, never rushed, never loud, yet every word she spoke shifted markets. He watched interview after interview from the dim light of his apartment, the same apartment he had once complained was too small because she refused to think bigger. Now he understood the irony. She had been thinking bigger than he could even imagine. She announced initiatives that erased medical debt for millions, launched sustainable energy grids in developing nations, and funded scholarships that would educate generations. Commentators called her visionary, compassionate, unstoppable. Not once did she mention him. Not once did she hint at betrayal or humiliation. Her composure was more devastating than revenge could have ever been. Meanwhile, his own world began to shrink. Colleagues looked at him differently after discovering he had been married to her for years without ever realizing who she truly was. Some laughed behind his back. Others questioned his judgment openly. He tried to defend himself at first, claiming he had chosen to leave, that wealth had complicated their relationship, but the narrative quickly turned against him when old posts resurfaced. Jokes he had made about her fantasy fortune, comments dismissing her ambition. Each screenshot felt like a mirror reflecting his arrogance. One evening, unable to silence the noise in his mind, he found himself standing outside her company's global headquarters. The building pierced the skyline, its mirrored surface reflecting the city lights like a constellation brought to Earth. Employees streamed in and out with purpose, their badges glinting under security lights. He hesitated at the entrance, suddenly aware of how small he felt compared to the empire rising behind the glass. He imagined walking in, asking to see her, apologizing for every careless word, every smirk, every time he reduced her dreams to jokes. But what apology could possibly bridge the gap between mockery and belief? Through the towering windows, he spotted her in a conference room high above, surrounded by executives. Even from a distance, her presence commanded attention. She wasn't just wealthy, she was respected. And respect, he realized painfully, had been the one thing he had failed to give her. His phone buzzed again with another breaking announcement. Her foundation had pledged the largest humanitarian grant in history, targeting global hunger and climate resilience. Social media erupted with praise, calling her a once-in-a-generation leader. As rain began to fall, droplets streaked down the glass facade, distorting his reflection until it blurred into insignificance. He finally understood that he hadn't lost her because she was secretly a trillionaire. He had lost her long before the divorce, lost her the moment he chose pride over partnership, ridicule over curiosity, ego over empathy. She had given him years of quiet loyalty, testing whether he could love her without the armor of wealth protecting her heart. He had failed not because he lacked money, but because he lacked vision. As he turned away from the building, soaked and shivering, he realized the fortune he walked away from was not just financial. It was the chance to stand beside someone extraordinary and grow beyond his limitations. Inside the tower, she continued shaping a future measured not in currency alone, but in impact, resilience, and hope. And for the first time, he saw the truth with painful clarity. The greatest wealth she possessed was never her trillions, but her strength to rise without bitterness and to build a legacy that would outlive both love and loss.